So we will open up the meeting, the council virtual meeting for Monday, June 29th. And this meeting is being recorded. We will have a executive session towards the end of this meeting in which the council will be getting off this Zoom call and going to a private executive session email. Also, Sophie and I had a quick discussion 5 minutes ago, and we would like to push the work plan discussion back a week, if that's possible.
Yep.
We haven't really been able to flush it out completely yet. So.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, good.
Good.
All right, agenda. So roll call, all counselors are present. Agenda review, I don't think we have anything to put on to the agenda. So we're up to update on Wildland-Urban interface fire danger. Chief Lowe.
Council, thanks for having me tonight. Jeff Lowe, Fire Chief for the town of Orono. I just wanted to touch base with the council and let them know an action that we undertook recently, which was to suspend nearly all outdoor burning in the town of Orono, and that's a result of a request put forward by the Maine Forest Service. We've seen over 700 wildfires in the state of Maine so far this year, which really is a significant number, and numbers they haven't seen for quite some time. And they're concerned, obviously, as some of the councils have already talked about tonight, with the dryness that we've had regionally, actually statewide. It's the humidity and the lack of wind that has prevented us from having a major conflagration somewhere in the state. So as dry as it's been, we've had those two things working for us, even though they don't feel like they've been working for us. The problem with Orono is that Orono really likes its trees. And as positive as that is, and as good as that makes us feel to live among the trees, and as much as it makes you feel as though you're in touch with nature and it's a natural cooling and whatnot, it really is a double-edged sword, because it creates a problem when we get into conditions like this. And while these conditions aren't similar to what happened all the way back in 1947, they have some comparisons to them, if you will, as far as dryness, duration of dryness and whatnot. In 1947, we saw major wildfires that ravaged parts of southern Maine and coastal Maine, around the Bar Harbor area, down in York County and some other places. So really we are hyper vigilant, if you will, when the weather conditions turn like they have. And today's rain is a fair amount of rain, but I'm not sure it's going to get us over the hump to where we need to be. And we'll have to watch the rest of the week, as some of the other councils talked about, as to just how wet it's going to be to determine whether or not we're going to lift the bans. Let's go back real quick to the trees in Orono and the hazards they present. If you go out Forest Avenue, starting from the post office and all the way out to the end of Orono, you'll see homes that are tucked back in amongst the trees. You'll see pine needles on roofs. You'll see shrubs or bushes right up against homes and those types of things. And again, while they're aesthetically pleasing or put us in touch with neighbor, they create a significant fire risk for the people that live there. So the other thing that I wanted to bring up was that in addition to the fact that we had suspended burning, we're also going to start a campaign in relation to how those houses are situated and things people can do to help protect their property, protect their families and stuff like that. Wildland-Urban interface is when homes like those on Forest Avenue start mingling with the natural environment around them. So what we're looking at talking about are things like defendable spaces, which is usually 30 foot around the home where there's some type of fuel reduction, whether it's vegetation or moving your log pile for winter wood stoves back away from the home 30 feet or wherever the case may be. Another piece that can be done is fuel reduction in that area is removing specific types of brush or bushes that don't necessarily need to be there, not to take away from the aesthetics of the property. That's really not what we would suggest, but it's more along the lines of looking for things that you can do to help save your property if we end up in some type of wildfire situation. And then the last thing will be a discussion or awareness of what's called ladder fuels. And ladder fuels are basically, if you own a house in that type of environment, you have a grass fire that catches your brush on fire, which in turn sets your home on fire, or brush extending to trees, which also extend to your home. So again, just a public awareness campaign. This isn't anything we're going to come out and tell people they have to do. It's not anything we would look for in an ordinance or anything like that. That's California stuff. That's where they do a lot of this stuff. But I think it's really important for residents to understand, especially if they haven't heard it before, just what type of risk that they are exposed to by living in that type of environment, and some of the simple things that they can do to help harden their home against a fire threat. Sometimes it's hard to think when you live in a community downtown, if you will, like we do on Main Street or Forest Avenue, or even out in parts of Benneck Road and some other areas, that wildfire presents a risk to us. But again, if you drive out Forest Avenue and you start to really look at some of the properties out there, that is the typical type of wildfire danger areas that you find in places like California, Oregon, and those types of things. So again, we're keeping an eye on what's going on weather-wise. We're taking our cues from the Maine Forest Service. And I just wanted to make sure you guys were aware of what's happening and some of the initiatives that we'll be going forward with as well. One last thing I'd like to throw to you is 4th of July is coming right up. Orono does have a no fireworks ordinance unless you're in fact a contractor. So just as a reminder to everybody, those are not permitted in town. If they are going off, or whether they're more than likely, if we get called for it, we'll be calling law enforcement, but I suspect that probably the police department will be receiving some notification as well. So I think that's all I had for you, Council. Certainly if you have any questions.
Thanks, Jeff. Does council have any questions or comments? No. Thank you very much, Jeff. We will keep our fireworks at home. All right, moving on to new business. Order 20-91. Order approving the fiscal year 2020 to 2021 municipal budget. Operating expenses, $7,886,139. Capital debt service, P&I, $709,295. Capital expenses, $942,180. Total municipal expenses, $9,537,614. General revenues, $2,593,970. Revenue sharing, $1,248,160. Use of unassigned fund balance, $400,000. Revenue to offset capital expenditures, $321,500 for the total municipal revenue, $3,630. Total amount to be raised by taxes for the municipal budget, $4,973,984. Could I get a motion, please?
Move. So
Move approval.
Great. All right. Sophie, do you want to add anything to this?
So I have a few slides, but I don't have to use them. It's totally up to what you all want.
I'd love to see your slides.
Okay. I'm seeing nods, so if you would show us your slides.
COVID is over, I'm going to get much better at this, much quicker. This is what Cindy just read. I just want to highlight that this budget is based on some uncertainty in our revenue projections, specifically related to state municipal revenue sharing, and we expect to come back to the table with the town council in probably early August to review new revenue forecasts, which may change our budget. In order to make the budget work, we've cut many expense lines. There are a few that will definitely impact services. The pool is closed this summer. That's more due to COVID-19, but we took that savings. There are staff reductions. We have a part-time 20-hour-a-week position at the library that is going to remain vacant through the year. And we have a shared position at Public Works and WPCF that is going to stay vacant through the year at this point. The WPCF position is going to impact how quickly we can get to sidewalks and our winter maintenance, because that is the time that position would normally work. The town clerk's office is going to be open to the public 4 days a week, so Monday through Thursday with some evening hours. And we have some delays in infrastructure projects. Those cuts allowed us to hold the municipal tax rate. So the tax rate for municipal services flat at $10.04 per $1,000 of value. The homestead exemption rate is increasing by $5,000, so people will be paying their taxes based on less taxable value unless they've made improvements to their home if they are homestead eligible. Overall, we are predicting a $1.64 increase on the mill rate, which will move us from $26.45 to $28.09. And you guys like the pie. So this is the final pie with the school at 58.7%, the town at 35.7%, and the county at, you're over the county, 5.6. That sound right? Yep.
Yes.
So I thought it was kind of interesting if you actually took everything, you know, when somebody pays $1, if this were $1 and you divided that dollar coin up, what it would look like. So you see that we've got an awful lot of municipal services that are funded on not a whole lot of money. And then I wanted to show that to you. This is net for commitment, and it's not perfect because we don't net budget, but it gives you a sense when you look at our expense budget and the $4.5 million that we are going to raise. It gives you a sense of how that money is distributed. And you will see that we don't have one huge cost center, but Public Works, Fire Department, Police Department, General Public Safety really accounts for more than half of our total budget. Then when you look at general government, that's everything that it takes to keep the government going. And capital infrastructure is almost 6% of our budget. That's what I have.
Great, thank you. So could you explain what would happen if we decided to change the budget after we voted it? If we voted in today, what we would be looking at in August?
So there are a few things that could happen in August, right? I could be totally shocked and absolutely have nailed the revenue projections and we wouldn't have to do anything. The likelihood of that is probably pretty small. If I have been too conservative, meaning we're going to get a lot more revenue than what I had projected, then council can come back and decide what to do with that revenue. So you could decide to adjust the budget at that point to add projected revenues in and also add back some of the things that you cut, or to reprioritize, which we have kind of talked about. If I was simply way too optimistic and the cuts are greater than what I anticipated, council would need to come back to the table and decide how we were going to live within the revenue that we were going to get. So are you going to increase taxes? Are you going to cut more services? You know, what are you going to do to make that gap? I tried very hard to not be Pollyanna-ish with our forecasts, because I know that that would put council in a really tough spot to have adopted a budget and then have to change it all. From a staff perspective, we will continue on a very limited spending mode until council finalizes the budget, which will allow you to have a little bit more flexibility in what you do with the budget. We can only commit taxes once, and I need taxes to start coming in for September in order to continue to pay our bills without having to borrow money. So
this may be too detailed, but so when we pass a budget, it's passed, and then we're just adjusting the budget. We're not taking it back, unvoting the budget, and then
no.
okay.
No, right up until the time we commit taxes, because the property tax revenue is our single largest stream of revenue, and that you have complete control over. Until we assess those property taxes, you can adjust the budget however you wish. And although we didn't formally do it this year when COVID-19 hit and our revenue projections were stalled, our revenue was stalled, we informally adjusted our expense budget to ensure that we didn't end up in a negative position at year end. And it's the same thing, only with FY21, you'll be able to make those choices before we commit taxes, have a little bit more flexibility.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have any other questions or comments?
I do. So the information that you gave us, there was a page that said that the budget affecting tax rate totals was $17,607,134 for the next fiscal year. And that was fiscal year 21 proposed municipal operating expense budget. And thank you very much for those figures. I really love them. And yes, I'm one of those people who loves the pie charts, loves the pie chart. So I read on that pie chart that the police was about 15%, the fire was about 18%, and public works was about 20% of those expenditures, according to the pie chart. However, in this fiscal year 21 proposed municipal operating expense budget, the dollar amount for the police department, $1,541,000. And so that was supposed to be 15%, right? But then the dollar amount for the public works was $1,769,000 or $770,000. So those are about the equivalent. And then the fire was $27,000 shy of $2 million. So it seems like the fire is actually more than the public works. Anyway, so it just didn't seem like those numbers on that pie chart actually matched up with what I have. Maybe they're from we have some other information that you gave us, but that's what I'm assuming that the pie chart would come out of that. So I just mentioned that because public safety turns out to be a really huge amount of our expenditures. And we are very proud of our public safety, and we do a lot of service for the university community, and we also are on call to serve the surrounding region. So I understand how it came to be that we have that so much of our budget goes to public safety. But with all the calls we've had about addressing the problems in our culture, about how we manage people in our public safety sector, I'm wondering if we could, if someone else would work with me over the course of the year, so that next year when this comes up, we've actually drilled down, because we were very good down to knocking out something that was $5,000 to try to reduce our budget, but we never did that with any line items within the police or fire. So we could say, oh, well, we're not going to fill this internship, or we're not going to fill that. And I don't know if that's because we haven't.
I think we did, Lori, and there are also union contracts in place, which are 3-year contracts, so you can't change them mid-contract. And then the last thing I was going to say is I think on Public Works, the capital infrastructure, it's not part of Public Work. I mean, it was different on the pie chart, but I don't know if it goes into the.
So I think you're seeing a bunch of numbers and drawing a lot of conclusions that aren't accurate. So let me try to start by unpacking that. The first thing I would say is that when I got to this is where the tax dollars went. I took the $4.9 million that we're going to collect in taxes, which is net, and I allocated that based on the percent of the expense budget. I allocated equipment that will be purchased for each of the department to those department cost centers. So in Public Works, you have a $185,000 plow truck that is part of that cost center. Okay, so there is that discussion just around the methodology. You can't compare apples and oranges, which is kind of what you were trying to do. The second is that I don't want to get into a debate about defunding public safety, but what I will say is that the public safety departments are the only two that run around the clock at the same level of operations, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. They represent approximately, well, nearly a half of our total staffing. So when you look and you say, this is so expensive, well, it's expensive because we're running the same level of staffing 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I would argue that our police department and fire departments are not overly funded. Number two, I sat through a workshop where we went line by line through the police department budget and the fire department budget. So to suggest that we're just throwing money at public safety because it feels like a good thing is disingenuous.
I didn't say that. And actually the first one, I should have made it two different parts. The first part I said is loved your pie chart, and as I was watching your pie chart and reading that, the numbers didn't add up. So it must be that the pie chart came from a different thing than what I got in the package for this. And I know that we keep changing numbers all the time, so it's hard to get the right numbers in the right places. And it could be that I'm looking in the wrong place. So that was the first part. And the second part was, yes, I know we went through things that we could change, but the things, and I know that you worked really diligently to negotiate with with the unions to do a contract. And I do know that that's going to be set for several years. And that contract contains requirements of how we would staff. So I'm not talking about anything that would affect this present year's budget. I'm using this as an opportunity to say, this is probably the time to start having these discussions in the community, especially since we've been getting so many emails where people are asking us about our public safety. So while people are interested, this would be a time to have informal discussions so that by the time we get to 3 years down the road, that would be the time that we would end up discussing whether we are having full staff 24 hours a day, because that's where the costs come in. And the only way to decide that, if you're a manager, is to figure out if you were to cut, how it would impact, right? So we do that already. If we cut this job, then we're not going to get the sidewalks cleared, and we make a decision based on how that cut would impact our community. But that's what I mean. We've not ever had a discussion, and that's because you're our manager and we trust you, and you've been doing a great job managing our town. However, this would be the time, way in advance of you having to negotiate it the next time around, to start having those discussions to educate the community, so that the community members then get back to us as the town councilors, so that we could then say, you know what, maybe we don't want to have 24/7. Maybe we do. Let's talk about what the impacts would be. So I'm not at all encouraging any change in the budget for now. I'm just using this as an opportunity because we have people watching, and we've had a lot of people emailing us about public safety. that this is the time to start a dialogue so that we can long-term have these discussions.
I'm sorry. I just want to clear up a couple of things that I think are points of confusion, just because I know folks that are watching might not have as much background detail as the rest of us do, but there are just a few things that I think are confusing or misleading in what you're saying, Lori, which is, first of all, I mean, you talk about we trust our town manager to do these negotiations with the union for us. We were in executive session multiple times going through these negotiations with our town manager. So I don't want the public to think that Sophie does the union negotiations without council's guidance and input. That's part of our job. Just because we do them in executive session and the public can't see them doesn't mean they're not happening. So we're responsible for the union contract as much as our town manager is. We negotiated it, the 7 of us. Gave her guidance in negotiating it. I think when you use the phrase public safety, that's kind of misleading, because public safety does include the general administration of public safety and also the fire department. So when you say, well, it's this big portion of our town budget, and also we should talk about people are contacting us about defunding the police. Those are two, that's apples and oranges. Our public safety department encompasses a lot of administrative things, and it encompasses fire and hazmat and EMT, like all that kind of stuff. The police portion of it is much smaller than the fire portion. So to say public safety and then talk about looking at the police budget are two different conversations. I think the pie chart that Sophie was putting forward was about how we allocate our resources, just to give a general sense to the viewer of, you know, where are we putting the things that we have at our disposal as a town, and not, I don't know why, I don't understand why you don't think the numbers add up, but it seemed straightforward to me. And I don't know if Sophie wants to tackle that again. And then finally, the police budget, for a relatively small portion of our overall budget, I actually was digging into the numbers myself over the last couple of weeks, thinking about how we use our resources when it comes to the police department. 88% or something close to 90% of our police budget goes to personnel costs. So that's not, you know, we're outfitting them with tanks and buying all kinds of crazy equipment and all these things that people are looking at. We're talking pay and health benefits and overtime and things that are union negotiated that have to do with their actual, like the personnel costs themselves. And we only have 15 badge and gun wearing personnel for a community of 10 to 20,000 people. So I think that we have a pretty modest, that's not to say that we shouldn't be looking closely at how we allocate our resources. I completely agree with that. But I want to make sure that we walk away from this budget meeting without the public having sort of a misunderstanding about what it is that the town of Orono is doing in regards to its police department and its public safety.
Anybody else have any comments or questions? No.
My only other comment is to say thank you to Sophie and the staff, because I know that you had a whole budget that you wrote and then COVID happened and you all had to just completely redo everything. And it is a testament to our manager and our staff that we were able to have a budget like this to put together. And I know how hard everyone worked on it. And I want to say thank you to all of those who did.
Agreed.
Great. Thank you, Sophie.
Great. All right. Anything else? If not, I'll ask Nancy to take a roll call vote, please.
Councillor Coons?
In favor?
Councillor Osher?
Favor?
Councillor Perry?
In favor?
Councillor Maynard?
In favor?
Councillor Gardner?
In favor?
Councillor Robertson?
In favor?
Councillor Grenier?
In favor.
And the vote is 7 in favor, and there were none opposed.
Thank you, Nancy. We'll move on to Order 2092, order approving a fiscal year 2020-2021 economic development budget totaling $873,575 funded by the following tax increment financing district development programs. Downtown and transit-oriented, $660,125. Webster Point, $35,125. Penobscot Valley Dermatology, $51,245. Dirigo Pines Inn, $124,580. Orono Basin, $2,500. I'll take a motion, please,
Move approval.
and a second.
Second.
All right. Sophie, you got anything to add to this one?
Yeah, just to let people know, this is a new order. The auditor has not ever mentioned it, but in review of last year's tax commitment, it became apparent to me that there really was never any direct approval from council for me to spend out of the development programs. You had to dig into the budget document. So later on in the consent agenda, there is an order that would authorize me to adjust these budgets for the credit enhancement agreements. So when we actually go through the tax commitment process, that is when we calculate the credit enhancement agreements for the year. In the economic development budget, it is based on an estimate. So that's the only thing that I would think will change. There are some capital expenses that are planned to come out of the TIF development programs for infrastructure improvements. Those are not part of this budget, and you vote on a project basis for those. So when we award a contract, for example, to do the Mill Street project, which is down later in this agenda, you will be approving me to spend approximately $75,000 out of the downtown and transit-oriented TIFs. So that infrastructure, capital infrastructure, is not included in this money. This is just what we fund our economic development operating budget with.
Okay, anyone have any questions or comments on this? Hearing none. Nancy, will you take a vote on Order 2092?
Sure. Council Coates,
In favor?
Council Osher,
In favor?
Councilor Perry,
In favor?
Councilor Maynard,
In favor?
Councilor Gardner,
In favor?
Councilor Robertson,
In favor.
Councilor Grenier.
In favor.
And the vote is 7 in favor, and there were none opposed.
Great. Order 20-93, order approving the water pollution control facility budget for fiscal year 2020 to 2021 in the amount of $1,604,664 for operations, $190,400 for capital improvements, for a total of $1,795,064. Take a motion, please.
So moved.
Second?
Thank you. Sophie, you got anything?
Just a reminder that this budget's actually approximately $23,000 less than last year, that we are seeing declining consumption, which is depressing our projected billables for sewer user fees. We had agreed this fall to examine the WPCF billing fee structure and capital needs moving forward, as we will other town departments. But just to make sure that the general public is aware that there is no rate increase at this time, but council is going to be continued to evaluate that.
Great. Any questions or comments? I know this is something we need to look at so that Joe has everything he needs to keep us moving forward. Given no questions or comments, I will ask Nancy to take a vote on Order 20-93.
Councilor Coates,
In favor?
Councilor Osher,
Favor?
Counselor Perry,
In favor?
Counselor Maynard,
In favor?
Counselor Gardner,
In favor?
Counselor Robertson,
In favor.
and Counselor Grenier.
In favor?
And the vote is 7 in favor, and there were none opposed.
And thank you for the next one not having so many numbers. Order 20-94, order approving the 5-year capital investment forecast for 2020 to 2024 for the town and water pollution control facility. Take a motion, please.
Move approval?
Second.
All right.
So as I understand from our conversation this year, that we are going to go ahead and adopt the current capital investment plan or forecast. This is a 5-year capital investment strategy for the community. We know that we will need to make revisions to it. This is a document that is giving us a sense of what is necessary, and we really need to sit, especially on the infrastructure side, and talk about where we are with infrastructure. And Rob and I are actually working, and Joe are working on some planning tools that will help with that discussion. So the reason I bring this up is, for example, if you lived on Chapel Street last year, you saw that your road was supposed to undergo construction this year, and we pushed it out in order to make the budget work. If somebody looks on there and thinks that they're going to have a road construction next year, that might have to change as we reconfigure the plan. And I just want, it's a goal at this point, but as revenues shrink, we have to rethink kind of our approach to our capital budget.
Sophie? Cindy?
Yeah.
I would just say, as revenues shrink, or if we determine that we can find additional revenues. I think we're very concerned about falling behind with infrastructure improvements, and that's why we're going to take a really careful look at it this year.
Yep, I also think this document is up for review in August. I think that's depending on where the revenues come in.
Yep.
Yeah. Anybody else have any comments or questions? What? I'll ask Nancy to take the vote, please.
Counselor Coons,
In favor?
Counselor Osher,
Favor.
Counselor Perry,
In favor?
Counselor Maynard,
In favor?
Counselor Gardner,
In favor?
Counselor Robertson,
In favor.
and Counselor Grenier.
In favor?
And the vote is 7 in favor, and there are none opposed.
Order 2095, order approving the fiscal year 2020-2021 fee schedule effective July 1, 2020. Take a motion, please.
Move approval?
I think Terry seconded. Okay. Sophie?
So there weren't a lot of changes on this fee schedule. The major ones were an increase to the RAD day camp daily or weekly fee. It changed stickers for the commercial demolition debris landfill to 18 months instead of 12 months long. So we're going to stay with our original pattern. If you buy them after July 1st of one year, they expire December 31st of the following year, so that people get some time with those stickers. And there were some minor changes to the fire department EMS billing, mostly related to multiple lift assists where there was no transport, or multiple calls to facilities where there was no transport at the end of the day. So people who were using our services routinely that weren't having to pay additional service fees.
That makes sense. Any questions or comments? Hearing none. Nancy, would you take the vote, please?
Counselor Coats?
In favor?
Counselor Osher?
Favor.
Counselor Perry?
In favor?
Counselor Maynard?
In favor?
Counselor Gardner?
In favor?
Counselor Robertson?
In favor.
And Counselor Grenier.
In favor.
And the vote is 7 in favor, and there were none opposed.
Thank you. Order 20-96, order awarding a bid for Kell Street, Mill Street, and Margin Street sewer improvements for Granite Inliner LLC of Fairfield, Maine, in an amount not to exceed $204,450, with funds drawn from the WPCF Infrastructure Reserve Fund, approximately $129,450, and the Downtown and Transit Oriented Tax Increment Financing District, approximately $75,000. We'll take a motion, please.
Move approval.
And a second.
Second?
Thank you. Sophie or Joe?
So I want to start, but Joe and I actually have a movie for you, so I hope you brought your popcorn. This is actually 3 discrete projects that we bundled together to try to get the best rate in terms of mobilizing equipment. So we've talked quite a bit about the Mill Street project, which is a stormwater catch basin that is attached to the sanitary sewer system. So when it rains, it is allowing a lot of water to flow into the system. So this project is designed to disconnect that storm sewer from the sanitary line and pull it across Mill Street to over near Pat's Park and connect it to a storm drain, catch basin over there. That actually came in at a really nice price for us, so it was less than what we had anticipated on that side. The other 2 projects are actually longer standing projects that have taken some time. Kell Street Interceptor is one that never dried out last year, and so Joe couldn't get put it out, for bid because we just couldn't get down to it. This year that doesn't seem to be as big a problem. And Margin Street is a relatively small lining project. So I wanted, I'm going to share my screen, and I'm hoping Joe was going to give you the narration, do his best Mike Rowe, to tell you what you're looking at, because it's kind of interesting. So just bear with me for a minute. Yeah. Ruh-roh. Oh, it kept going. I don't want it to go. There we go. All right, Joe, you're on.
Okay, that's Margin. Is that Margin Street?
This is Margin Street.
Margin Street. Now you see, Council, the break in the top of the pipe. This is what happens to the clay lines sometimes over time. So that those cracks in there have weakened that pipe a lot. The lining will redo those and make and restore the strength of the pipe. I don't know how far you went.
We're still going.
Okay.
They're
Just it's waiting for me to. That's just how I mark it when we do TV the line. See this? These are continuing right on. There's 4 links right there that have shown cracks in them.
So one of the things that Joe has taught me is that when we see cracks or crushed pipe, that means that water can just seep in, like lots of water. So in relining this, we should be helping our CSO efforts as well.
Are,
Certainly can't hurt.
are each one of these circles a joint as well?
Yes.
And will our lining break at each joint, or will it go straight?
It goes straight through from manhole to manhole. So you're actually essentially putting in a pipe. And then they'll go back in and they'll cut out the service lines. Like,
Yeah.
there's none here, but they'll reinstate the service lines.
Okay.
So Joe, is this where the storm sewage is connected? I mean, is this part of the catch basin issue at the
No.
moment?
No,
Okay.
this is a Margin Street sewer.
Okay,
It's one of the 3 projects.
right. And that pipe just needs to be replaced. Is that project's objective?
Right. We're just
Okay.
we're gonna line this pipe and then it will essentially replace it, yeah, from the outside.
Yeah, Joe, can you just explain in really broad terms what relining, how that works, how it's a folded piece of material? And
So this ones that these people do is called cured in place pipe. So they put a resin in the fiberglass and they fold it all up and they pull it in and then they put air pressure on it and then it expands against the inside of the pipe. So they're using the inside of the pipe itself as a form. So it just makes a new pipe on the inside.
and then we go back and we cut out where there are service lines that come in. It will make a little divot
Active
So that-
service, yeah.
so that we can connect. And
Because they measure all that, but you're right, it makes a divot, and that's how they usually see it. But like in this case of Margin Street, there's a bunch of inactive service lines in it, so we'll just line right through those and not reinstate them. And Kell Street, there's only one line in there. There's only one service into it anyway.
Joe, does this help with, like, does the street still have to be dug up? I mean, what is it, or does this help with that? So you don't have to do a whole lot of
This is
excavation? Yeah,
that's what we're after, Cindy, is not to, or Cheryl, I'm sorry, not to dig up the street. So we will do this if it's possible. We'd prefer to do this. Like Margin Street, we got to dig up one spot and repair it because it's too much of an offset. But mostly it's all going to be done from inside the pipe.
So at the end of that video, they had a pipe that protruded into the pipe. Was that how does that happen?
That happens before. We used to inspect all those. Everybody puts a service in. I inspect them now and have for, I don't know, 10, 12 years. But it used to be people just would put them in and they're not put in right. That particular one, we cut that out with a root saw and then we had to dig it up anyway to fix it because we got our root saw stuck. But
Thanks.
you're welcome.
In case council ever wants a visual aid, I have a few of these pipes in my yard because some friends of ours in the noise development found them in their barn. And according to Gary Noyes, they are circa 1956 or whenever they redid the sewer pipe in the noise development. I can't believe that they're still functional, and I'm glad that we're doing something to fix them because wow. Yeah, but in case anyone's curious about what one of these clay pipes looks like up close and personal, I have some spare in my yard.
sounds like a Orono Historical Society.
Yeah,
artifact.
I'm like Joe's big. I'm like your favorite fan, Joe. Ever since that day when we did the tour of the facility, I've never thought I'd learned so much about the process as I have.
Well, it's good. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah, I did actually.
I wish more people would come tour it.
I think if the citizens really looked at that, they would be like, "Wow."
Yeah, and then I'd be glad to take people on a tour. I like to show it off.
Be careful what you wish for. During COVID-19, everybody be lining up.
Well, let them in we don't let them in, but we can take them around the outside pretty easy.
There you go.
So the only thing I want to add here is that in the order, you will notice that it says approximately with regard to how much money is going to be taken from each of the funding sources. That's because the contractor gave us a not to exceed a bid for the total project. Mandy will, when she gets her quantities and the bills, she will actually do the separation for us of what is owed for the Kell Street and Margin projects and what is owed for the downtown TIF project. So that is not an exact number. It will go back and forth.
And the other thing is, I'd like to point out, the Oliver Associates inspection on some of this work is not in here. I would not bother with having them do the lining and stuff, but the groundwork, I think we need to make sure that they're on board with that.
Is there any other questions or comments? Okay, is Nancy still on? Is that?
Yep.
Okay. Nancy, would you take a vote on order 20-96, please?
Counselor Coon,
In favor?
Counselor Osher,
In favor?
Counselor Perry,
In favor?
Counselor Maynard,
In favor?
Counselor Gardner,
In favor?
Counselor Robertson,
In favor.
and Counselor Grenier.
In favor.
And the vote is 7 in favor, and there were none opposed.
Great, thank you very much. And thank you, Joe, for that narration.
My pleasure.
All right, we're moving on to the consent agenda. Could I get a motion to move order 20-97 through 20-114 of the consent agenda?
Move approval.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All right. Nancy, will you take a vote on that, please?
Nancy, I unmuted you, so you'll be able to do it.
Oh. Counselor Coons,
In favor?
Counselor Osher,
Favor?
Counselor Perry,
In favor?
Counselor Maynard,
In favor?
Counselor Gardner,
In favor?
Counselor Robertson,
In favor.
and Counselor Grenier.
In favor.
And the vote is 7 in favor, and there were none opposed.
Thank you very much. How am I doing public comment today? I saw a chat, but I didn't see any other.
If you have public comment, then I would, or if you're requesting public comment, then I would recommend that anybody who'd like to make a public comment select the raise hand on Zoom, and then you would be able to recognize them, and I would be able to allow them to speak.
Okay. While that is happening,
Cindy?
yeah.
Quick question. There are also a number of people watching on Facebook who may have comment. Belle, did you address how they could get a comment into us?
I did. I posted on the Facebook video that comments on Facebook may not be seen during the meeting and that they should join the Zoom. And I provided the Zoom link directly on that comment feed.
Great, thank you. I just thought it was a pretty good time to mention that again live, since they are listening and may want to join us on Zoom.
Okay. Not seeing any raised hands.
So Sarah Marks has her hand raised.
Okay,
Would you like me to allow her to speak?
sure.
Okay. Oops.
Did that work?
Yes, you're now live.
Okay, sorry. I'm not on my phone and I've never done this on my phone. I guess first I just want to say thank you to all of you, to the town council and to all of the town staff. What an incredible amount of work on the budget with a lot of change. I was really impressed. Thank you. I just wanted to ask, I've heard some information that the town is beginning to talk about putting together some kind of a community liaison group with the police, which I think sounds great and really terrific. And I was wondering if you could share any details about how you're engaged in the planning process for that this summer, and whether there are plans to have people of color, Black, Brown, and Indigenous people take the leadership on the planning of that this summer. That was my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. It was an idea that has been floated with council, but because of the budget, we really haven't had much discussion other than we want to do something when, as soon as people get back to school. So we will be talking all about all those different things, and it is something that we want to hear from all different races, religions. So we'll keep you updated, and I'm sure we'll put something out when we get a little bit farther along in the process. I don't know if there's any the counselors.
I just wanted to add that before I brought this proposal to council, I had already spoken with the Office of Diversity and Inclusion on campus, and we specifically talked about ways to involve people of color in the planning and the conversation. So that I just want to assure, because I'm only saying this because we've gotten this question from a lot of citizens, and I think that it's a very important question, but just to assure everyone, I mean, that was a step in the process before, I even proposed it to council, because I understand how important that is. So yes, we are moving in that direction.
And is that something that will be talked about at a future council meeting when we would know to tune in, or how would the rest of us know when it's going to be discussed?
It will be discussed at a future meeting that will be noticed. It'll probably be a council workshop.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that you're all working on that, and I'm glad to hear that there are already voices involved, and the more the better. So thank you all very much for working on moving that forward.
You're welcome. Thank you. Belle, anybody else with their hand up?
Yes, we have one more person, Sonia Berthasil.
Okay.
And she has been added.
Okay.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Nice to see your faces. I did type a comment in the chat, and I'm going to assume that you already saw that. But I also had a question, and that's just that I'm wondering, I do think it's a really timely time to be making sure that the kind of tragedies we've seen happen in other parts of the country can't happen in Orono. And I think that examining what policies against discrimination we have in our policing is a really great thing to do. And so I'm curious if anti-discrimination policies and training and what's already implemented in that regard is that available on the website? How could I find out what's already presumably being done in our town in this regard?
Sophie?
So Currently, Sonia, it is not available on the website. Up until now.
Sophie, can you sit forward a little bit because you're very faint? Thank you.
So currently, those policies are not on the website. We have purchased a module that is now being implemented that will make those forward-facing policies. But if you're interested, I would encourage anybody to contact Chief Ewing. He has been more than happy to share our policies and to talk with people about what we do and why we do it. And he can be reached at jewing@orono.org.
Sophie, real quick, if I can just jump in here. I know we talked about this just the other week about this new module. Can you explain what that is and the fact that the reason we're doing this is so it will constantly refresh, so what is being presented is always the most up-to-date, because we don't want anyone finding one incidentally from 18 months ago or whatever. We want people to know exactly what we're doing here. So if you could just expand on that a little, please.
So as part of our accreditation process, we've used a module, a tool called Power DMS. It allows us to appropriately log and track policies and training. Right now, everything we do is electronic in terms of training certification and iterations of policies. And so we want to make sure that we are constantly updating our police policies to reflect best practices. And we don't want to end up with an old policy or a new policy that has not yet been, somebody has not yet been trained on, the department hasn't been trained on, to be making its way out as the policy, because that will create confusion in the community. So this is an integrated system that will allow for more public engagement with our policies and procedures. Belle and Josh are working right now to implement it. It will just take a little bit of time to be able to do that.
That's great. I love that move toward transparency and really applaud your work on that. So thanks for sharing information about it. And I look forward to having that up and running. Sorry, you may have said this and I just did not compute or I missed it. What's the expected timeline for having that all finished? Do we know that for sure?
Belle, can you give me an idea of when?
I have to work with Josh in order to identify exactly which policies are going forward and where we're going to put it on the website and how it all integrates. And we've been kind of wrapping up budget and FEMA stuff. So I expect that by the end of July, we would have it up and going, and possibly sooner.
Great, thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Belle, is there any other comments?
I see that Sarah Marks has her hand up again.
Okay, one more time, I guess, before we get into executive session.
Hi, am I back on?
You are.
Hi, I just realized I did forget to ask one thing I also wanted to ask. I'm sure you guys probably have already thought about this and maybe had these discussions, but I was also just thinking, I'm in my clinical counselor hat, which is one of my jobs over the years. I just wanted to ask, has there been some thinking about how whatever the, I don't know what you're calling them, but listening sessions or planning sessions over the summer, the moments for feedback from the community about what you're hoping to create with this committee. Has there just been some talking about how those are going to be structured so that they're not re-traumatizing for people? I have a friend in one town where they sort of asked people of color to come in and tell what their stories had been with the police that they wanted changed. And it was actually very re-traumatizing for folks. And then another friend in a community where there were people of color facilitating and leading those meetings, and it was done very differently, and it was not experienced that way. It was experienced as if a lot of authority was given to those voices, and it was a very positive experience for people. So I just was curious, are you doing some consulting with people about how to create those sessions and planning sessions in such a way with, you know, leadership by people of color and people with expertise in this so that it is a positive experience for the people who participate from all communities?
Yes, that's something that was a big concern for council. And so that's one of the things we're going to discuss as to how appropriately conduct these.
Thank you.
Sophie, it's
Thank
also
you very
my understanding that, I mean, we are actively seeking a facilitator. And just in case that wasn't clear to
Okay.
there, yeah, we are planning on working with a facilitator to make sure that there's a structure and that it's equitable and it's fair and people feel heard. And that's a very important point, though. Thank you for bringing that up, Sarah.
Okay. And is ideally a facilitator of color? Is that what you're looking for? Or I noticed we don't have folks of color on council, I know. And so, I mean, I just think it might be important that someone, you know, from one of those communities is in a kind of a leadership role in those meetings.
Yeah, we'll definitely think about it.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Megan, do you have anything to add?
We're really, and we are just coming out of the budget season and haven't gotten a chance to really get fully into the planning for this. And that's kind of our next big kind of thing to tackle. So I'm sorry we don't have more specific answers, but.
Sarah, we're looking into facilitator from restorative justice, from the restorative justice restoration. It's not a restoration project in Belfast, who has they have a very long history with working with the police and the public. And we've done circles. I think we've done circles at the Wilson Center even in the past. So that's a possibility as well.
Okay. Thank you very much. We'll close public comment. And before we go into executive session, I just wanted to bring up a quick thing about, we've been having a lot of email traffic. People are very invested in a lot of different topics. And so it's confusing as to who should respond to what email. And so I guess I would ask that council, if there is a operational email that comes in, if you would connect with Sophie so that either she can respond or she can give you the information to respond. And if it's more of a policy situation or a political situation, if you can respond to it, but if you would copy all of council and copy Sophie so that she, I don't know if there's anything else, any questions or comments, but because I know it gets confusing when we all get the same email as to who should respond or how that should be responded to. So.
Since this is the public comment period, I did want to say that we did all get an email about a week ago. I think it was more than a week ago, from someone who noticed the flags. We've had lots of comments about the flags on the bridge, and we've had people who commented saying we don't have American flags on the bridge, and someone actually contacted us to suggest that. So since I didn't see anyone responding, when I ended up writing to, and I didn't press reply all to everyone, apologies. So that was Dennis Cross was interested in doing something similar to what's been done with the rainbow flags for July. So I'm wondering if someone, should we discuss that, or actually in the fee schedule, maybe if this is gonna be a regular thing, maybe we should have a fee for groups that wanna have us partner with the university to use that bucket truck to put up signs, but basically put up flags. I suggested to him, it worked for the people with the rainbows that Sophie organized the bucket truck from the University of Maine to put them up, and obviously they're going to come down at the end of the month. So it seems like since we're near the end of the month, this would be the time to talk about it. So there's only will have to be one bucket truck trip, if that's possible.
Yeah, doesn't Kiwanis usually put up the American flags? Yeah.
So I happen to know this because Nancy fielded a call this morning and called the University of Maine just to find out what was happening. And they are indeed intending to put up the American flag when they take down the pride flags.
Yay, that's great. Thank you very much.
Cindy,
Yes.
to your point, I mean, this is what I've been doing because I'm always very wary, excuse me, of I don't want to go out and say something that's going to imply that it's us as a collective group. So I usually go to Sophie and say exactly what you're saying. You will not see an email from me going to a resident unless I've actually touched base with somebody, because like I said, I don't want the implication to be put on all of you without our conversation. So I'm already in camp with this.
Great. You're you're muted.
Yeah, I muted myself. I just want to, two quick things. I want to just remind folks that we don't own any flags. We don't own the bridge. I would be really leery about putting something in place that said we're going to do something. The system we have right now where somebody has a project and they want to bring it to the town council to get more than just a easy, a referral from town staff, that seems to work. And quite honestly, that is the answer I have been giving people who have ideas, whether it be American flags or other types of flags, that people should put their proposal together that would also include how they're going to purchase said flags and get said flags to us to put up. And so I would just caution people with that.
We're not putting up the flags. We're getting them to the university.
We're getting them to we just don't have the infrastructure to be able to manage that, the resources. And I would also say, I'm not sure how much the university has. I mean, they are not the designated flag people. They work it into their schedule when they can use the bucket truck. And so it's a nice thing to have, but I would just caution people that I'm not sure we want to be in a place where we're changing out flags multiple times, right after each other. That putting flags up for a month was really nice. And when those come down, if new ones go up, I can see why they would be able to do that. But I just wouldn't want people to think that flags can go up on a moment's notice and can happen all the time, because it really depends on the university's resources. The other thing I just wanted to be very clear about, I'm here to answer council's questions. That's my job. My job is also to run the day-to-day operations for the town. And when I get people who are very confused at where they go when they have a concern about town operations, and it turns out that they've been through individual counselors, and it never quite gets to me. It makes it very difficult for me to be responsive to the community. The other thing that makes it very difficult is if residents contact you with concerns and you assume that you know what department they go to, and forward them on directly to my staff, which is not something that we do here by charter. But when you do that, it now involves multiple staff people some of the time who have no idea why they're getting an email about something that they have nothing to do with. And so I would just ask you, if you want to refer something to me, to town, please refer it through me and let me decide where it goes.
Okay, thank you very much. So this portion of the meeting is coming to an end. I would ask for a motion to move into executive session. I'll read it in just a second. Everybody remember, you have to get off, go to the email that Belle sent and get on. And for the public, we will not be taking any action after the executive session. Oh, we will be.
You will. You will.
So this meeting will end, but we will reopen this the current webinar, we will reopen after the executive session.
Okay, but only to deal with the executive session.
I've
No.
got an update that was after the work plan that I'd still like to give you if I can, even if we forego the work plan.
Okay, do you want to do the update now?
Sure.
Okay.
You ready?
Yep.
All right. Reminding folks that town is going to celebrate the 4th of July on Friday. Is the town holiday, so staff will all be at home enjoying themselves, except for the ones that are working. We were very pleased to see that MRC has reached an agreement with PERC to take all of the waste from this area and incinerate it as opposed to landfill it as we work through the Coastal Resources of Maine bypass period. The default period has come and gone. MRC board is not taking any further action, legal action at this moment. We are instead turned our attention to ensuring DEP compliance at the plant and also working with others to see if we can find a buyer for the plant. There's been quite a bit of movement on that. So we are, we're still pretty hopeful that the plant will reopen, and it was doing what it was designed to do, so that makes us happy. But at least in the interim, we will be incinerating as opposed to landfilling, and that is about 75% of all member waste is going to be going to PERC. I am very pleased to announce that staff led by Dave Mylan received a $34,000 grant from the state of Maine to help keep Maine healthy. So this is where we put in a request to be able to offset some of the costs associated with our public health team to educate the community about COVID-19 and also to ensure social distancing out at the Goulds Landing and Neto Savoy Park. The Goulds Landing and Neto Savoy Park are open, and they are requiring permits to park. People must park in the parking spaces that are designated. Don't just pull up on the side of the road and park. You will get a ticket. We are running special police details out there, and we are, as we speak, trying to identify whether we want to use a third-party security, which is the same company that we get the crossing guards from, or if we, how we're going to manage that. And Dave is out sick today. We got the grant on Friday, so next step is going to be to put that together.
Stephanie, I'm sorry, what are the hours for the Neto Savoy Park and Goulds Landing?
Dusk until a half hour, dawn until a half hour after sunset.
Okay, so all day long.
Yeah, and we of course are not going to be able to put people out there that length of time. We'll look to try to have people monitoring it during peak times.
Okay, thank you.
Joe has been dealing with significant issues around the flushable, non-flushable wipes and other items that are making their way into the sanitary sewer system that simply don't belong there. We actually had 2 pumps clog at the Penobscot Street pump station at the same time. So that was quite an adventure for our staff on a weekend to come in and deal with that. So anything anybody can help us do to get the word out that you only flush the 3 Ps, and I'll leave it at that. The landfill is going to be closed this weekend due to the holiday. We are processing absentee ballots faster than you can imagine downstairs. Last number I heard was around 900. absentee ballots had gone out. So this is an election that we're usually in the 300 to 400 voters range. We're up to 900. This election is on July 14th, so it includes the school budget, the state referendum, which includes a bond, and primary elections. We are planning to staff that election with paid staff. We have a couple of our diehard elections volunteers who have been cycling in to assist in the back room where we can get enough social distance for them. But we are working very diligently to try to process all of this. Shelley's doing a great job.
Sophie, can we confirm though? I've heard that it's an oversized envelope and therefore requires extra postage.
So it does. It requires 70 cents, Belle?
Yes, it does.
And yes, so you gotta have that. We are accepting them right at our drop box. And for the November election, we've worked with the post office to actually get an oversized collection box that we'll be able to use. But the post office has to deliver the ballot. The town will get the bill if it doesn't have enough postage. And finally, we learned this afternoon that the summary judgment that had been decided in our favor in the French versus Town of Orono et al. Has been appealed to the First Circuit. So we are now in a holding pattern with that.
Sophie, can you go back to the election? So
Yep.
if somebody has not gotten an absentee ballot, they can go to the polls from 7 to 8?
7 a.m. to 8 p.m. on election day, which is the 14th of July, a Tuesday.
Do they have to wear a mask?
Yes. Yes. We are going to get more information. Shelley and Belle have been working through the guidance as to how we're going to move people in and out, because it's going to look much different than it has in previous years. We need to bring people in one way and have them exit another way. We're going to have limited numbers that can be in at any one time. And at this point, we're asking anybody who is coming into town hall that are not routine visitors or staffers to wear masks. And Belle wanted to make sure I was aware they're up to 1,100 today. So my number was from Thursday.
That's great. Okay, and then, so I didn't mean to interrupt you. So now you're done with the update, or you have one more thing?
No, I think I've had plenty.
Okay. All right, then I will take a motion to move into executive session pursuant to 36 MRSA section 841 exec to consider a request for property tax abatement based on poverty and or disability number 2018-001. Could I get a motion, please?
I move that we enter executive session for the stated purpose.
All right, all those in favor? Oh. Nancy, the hands went up. Do you need a verb? You need to take a roll call. Sophie's saying yes. So Nancy, would you please take a roll call?
Yes. Counselor Coons?
In favor?
Counselor Osher?
Favor?
Counselor Perry?
In favor.
Counselor Maynard?
In favor.
Counselor Gardner?
In favor?
Counselor Robertson?
In favor.
Counselor Grenier?
In favor.
And the vote is 7 in favor, and there were none opposed.
Nancy, I don't have any problem getting the roll call for the vote when we come back, so you can be done for the day if that works for you.
Sounds great. Thank you. That sounds great.
Right, so we'll see you all in the other Room.
Bye, Nancy.
Finance, 2, 4, 6, 7. We're not missing anybody? Okay.
Cheryl.
Cheryl. I was gonna say.
Cheryl, someone.
It's an important someone.
Mhm.
I was getting all excited for dinner, so
I understand we've got coconut shrimp happening at my house.
Ooh.
Keto coconut
I'll be right
shrimp.
over.
Yeah. We all know where you live, Sophie.
Yeah. Oh, I did have a conversation with Town of Easy. They think that they are gonna be fine to wait until next June for the fluoride vote.
Good.
Good. That gives us something to do in the winter. Educate
I always worry about having something to do.
Yep. Should
Maybe she thinks you guys can handle it?
she asked where to go, so
Yeah.
Do you want our budget binders back, by the way?
Oh, I love to recycle if
That
you're
was very
good with it.
alliterative.
okay. Will they fit in the box?
No.
No. I'm gonna give her 30 more seconds. Are you gonna do a roll call vote? All right. Well, I'll take a motion for order 20-115, order to consider a request for poverty tax abatement based on poverty and/or disability, number 2020-001. Could I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
All right. No?
Ready?
So, I
Want
will,
me to do a roll call?
yes, please, do a vote.
Counselor Maynard,
Approve, yes. In
Counselor
favor.
Kuntz,
In favor.
Counselor Gardner,
In favor?
Counselor Grenier,
In favor.
Counselor Osher,
In favor?
Counselor Perry.
In favor.
The roll call is complete. 6 yes, 0 no's. Motion
Great.
passes.
Thank you so much. You'll get us the findings of fact on the 13th.
Yep.
And go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just gonna remind folks that we have a comprehensive plan committee meeting on Monday. Is our next meeting together this
Great.
coming Monday?
And again, I won't be available for that. Sorry.
It's
okay.
I'll miss
people
you.
are allowed to have lives.
I thought you just said you're allowed to have wives, and I thought that was incredibly funny. Lord knows I'm trying.
I would never say that, Sam. Never.
With that, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
All right. All of those in favor by show of hands? Everybody have a great 4th, and we'll see you for comp plan.
All right. Bye-bye.